YouTube, I'm so excited. We got a My Career game. It's me versus Paul George. First time, Hornets versus Pacers. It's going to be epic. It's hard to stop him. It's definitely hard to stop me. I'm trying to do my thing. He's going to try to do his thing. Anyway, I want to talk about the NBA playoffs again. So let's review what happened in my other video, where I predicted every series correctly except for one, which was the Clippers versus the Spurs. And that came down to Game 7 and a crazy shot, like that crazy shot from Roy Hibbert. But it was a crazy floater from Chris Paul getting past one of the best defensive players in the game, and Tim Duncan's outstretched hand to make the shot. So it could have gone either way. I could have easily have been right, but I did say that's probably the toughest series to choose between. The other tough series I was trying to figure out was the Rockets versus the Dallas Mavericks, but who knew that Rajon Rondo was going to get injured and a whole bunch of other things were going to happen. Anyway, so last series, if you've been following me on Twitter, I've been pretty accurate. I called the Cavs in 6 regardless of the injuries. And now it's time for the conference finals. There's only 4 teams left. This is the Final Four of the NBA. This is when the good teams are the only teams left. You can't get lucky to get to this point. You just got to be good. So who do I think is going to win for the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference? Let's break it down because we got a little bit of time here today. Sorry about that. Allergies. Oh, but before we get into that, real fast, look at that pick and roll executed to perfection on the weak side. So the first matchup is let's go Western Conference. We've got the Golden State Warriors and the Houston Rockets. So we have James Harden finally, winning the series. Like, he really earned that one. I gotta give him props for that. Dwight Howard, of course, he's been there before. Not in the Western Conference, but he's been to the finals on the Eastern Conference. He was basically Allen Iverson in big man form. A team that's based around him. And great steal, picked his cookies, and I can't throw an alley-oop to myself. Oh my goodness, this is embarrassing. But as I was saying, we have Stephen Curry, the only team that can really get past the Memphis Grizzlies, the only team that really gave them trouble. Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson, the Splash Brothers, they did a good job. Though actually, the whole team did a good job. The thing is that Tony Allen got injured, and sure, you can say a lot about Tony Allen, how he has no offense, but his difference between him being on the court and him being off the court was easily noticeable. Steph Curry went from hitting 2 3-pointers per game out of like 20 to hitting 6 and 5 and 8 and whatever else. So, as the situation changed, facts change. Or as facts change, the situation changed. You know what I'm trying to say. Either way, I've picked the Golden State Warriors to win regardless, but when Tony Allen went out, I was like, they're definitely going to win. And that was not an easy float over Paul George. But, so who do I have inside of this matchup between the Rockets and the Warriors? Easily the Warriors. What did I say before? The reason why I gave Stephen Curry the MVP nod over James Harden was because every time they played against each other, James Harden was neutralized. So let's go over what happened with James Harden this season against the Warriors. They lost all 4 games. Now that doesn't mean that they couldn't come back and win the series, because we saw last year that the Thunder and the Rockets had both swept the Spurs, but the Spurs beat the Thunder. But that all that stuff is circumstantial, because we all know that the Spurs are a different team in the postseason and regular season. And when it comes to this team, they haven't made it to a finals together. They don't have that much playoff experience. So let's base it off of what we know. Like I said, they lost all 4 games, and James Harden had 34 and 33 the first couple times. He had good games. Then he tried to do too much with too little. You sure we can say because Dwight was gone, but we can't praise him for being number 2 in the West without Dwight, and then say, like, you can't use Dwight as an excuse. So you can't have it both ways. The next game, he had 22, and then he had 12, shooting 33 and 27%. They know how to lock him down on offense, and their game was just so up-tempo and crazy, and they didn't even have David Lee all the time. So you could say at that time, David Lee was considered to be the starter before Draymond Green took his huge, leap into defensive player stardom. So I personally believe that it's going to be more of the same, and the Warriors are going to run over the Houston Rockets. I normally don't predict the games, like how many games they're going to win in, but if I had to guess, I can't see it going higher than 6. I want to just say 5 and just really go for it, but Dwight's the unknown factor. So Yeah, I'll go 5. I'll go 5. Definitely 6. No way it's going to be a 7-game series. Now, let's go over to the Eastern Conference. We have the Atlanta Hawks versus the Cleveland Cavaliers. I think this is going to be surprisingly competitive, although I'm definitely expecting the Cavaliers to find a way to overcome them because LeBron James, we see what he does against the tough, good team-based teams in the playoffs. After he got over that hump quite a few years back, he's been to the finals 4 straight times. Now you could say part of that has something to do with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh, or you could say that the teams in the East don't have the firepower they used to, and the best players in the East are now older. So let's get into why I believe that the Cleveland Cavaliers are going to overtake the Atlanta Hawks, and I'll give them 6 games also. Now, if you've been following the season, you may be saying, "Yo, Greco, what are you thinking? Like, why are you gonna choose the Cavaliers over the Hawks when the Cavaliers lost 3 out of the 4 games that they played against the Hawks this season?" Or you could say, "How are you gonna choose them over the Hawks when the Cavaliers have 3 major injuries? One to Anderson Varejao, who was a standout defensive player. You have one to a former All-Star in Kevin Love, and you have another one to a former All-Star MVP in Kyrie Irving. 3 guys who were starters at the beginning of the season." And I can just simply say, well, I'll break it down like this. The Hawks haven't been the same Hawks team that we saw earlier inside the season. When they got those wins over the Warriors and the Trailblazers and the Cavaliers and a bevy of other top teams, they were on an unbelievable streak. They were playing some in-sync, in-tune basketball. Jeff Teague was the man during that time. He is not being as productive as he was during that time. Like recently, they had, oh my goodness, I just dribbled the ball between David West's legs. Look at that spin. It was so nice we got to see it thrice. This is the 2nd time, and then one more time for good measure. How did NBA and 2K15? Say what you want to say about the physics in this game, but if this could happen, wow. But as I was saying about the Hawks, I'm sorry about that, I got a little distracted. They had 4 All-Stars, just like the Detroit Pistons had after they won the championship. But that's because they were the team. They didn't lose a single game for, like, what was it, over a month or something like that? It was ridiculous. They were playing with a certain type of rhythm. They had the momentum. They had the juice at the time. Nice alley-oop to Gerald Henderson. But just because a team can win like 20 games in a row at a few months before that doesn't mean that they're going to win it again. Look at T-Mac on the Rockets. They didn't even make it out of the 1st round that year. On paper, it really doesn't make sense for me to choose the Cavaliers over the Hawks. The Hawks have like the 3rd highest scoring average against them, although if you want to really get technical, we could say that they only played the Warriors twice and they went into overtime, so it really should be like probably about the 2nd, but let's forget about that. They have all their players. They got Al Horford on top of that, who was a really underrated defensive player. They look like they're in the driver's seat even without Thabo Sefolosha, but just watching them, they don't pass the eye test. And I'm big on the eye test. I like reading stats. Stats are very important. But if you don't, stats can tell any story you want them to tell. And if you don't know how to read the stats that matter, it's a waste of time. And so far, like I said, the only thing I got wrong was a last-second shot by Chris Paul, which was an 11 out of 10 on the degree of difficulty. So I'm just gonna stick with my instincts, and that's who I have. I have the Warriors coming out of the West, Cavaliers coming out of the East. Who do you guys have? Am I wrong? Tell me why. Let's break it down in the comments, as always. And unfortunately, I lost this game. I wasn't guarding Paul George the whole time when he got that 42, but he was just really hard to stay in front of, especially with those backdoor cuts. Hey, we can't win them all. What can I say?